Today, the world's fastest sprinters gather in France for one final showdown before the season's end at Paris Tour. 25-year-old Tyler Farrar has had a breakout year and as of late has been virtually unbeatable. The American looks to grab win number 10 of the season, but he has his work cut out as rivals like Tom Bonen and Oscar Freire look to put the Garmin rider in his place. And don't forget about the rest of the peloton, where a breakaway could spoil the sprinter's day. Philippe Gilbert could be producing a great result, and Gilbert takes it on the line. The sprinters were robbed, and boy, they made a big mistake when they allowed those boys to go. Yes, it's the 103rd edition of Paris Tour, next on Versus. Yes, it's that time of the year again. It's autumn time here in Tours. It is a beautiful sunny day, the 103rd running of the race from Paris to Tours. But for the last 21 years, the race has come down the home straight here and has finished on the finishing line in the Avenue de Grammont. And it's probably going to be the last time, Paul, because next year we are going to see this road dug up and the finish realigned somewhere else.
Yes, we don't know where that will be just now, but this, Phil, really is a mecca for the sprinters. There are two big races in the season that the sprinters want to win. The first is the Milan-San Remo at the very start of the season, right down towards the end. The other one they want to put onto their pedigree is, of course, Paris Tours, and it's a race route specifically designed to be a race for the sprinters.
But as we saw last year, the sprinters can be outwitted. There's certain to be an early breakaway. Will there be a Philippe Gilbert tricking them at the finishing line this time around? The race is a traditional one, but with a new start from Chartres, the race itself is about 14 miles shorter, but is still a very flat route.
Very flat route. The riders will move away from Chartres. 11:15 was the start this morning. 230 kilometres, 143 miles of racing. However, there's a little bit of a surprise and a sting in the tail for the men who want to try and outwit the sprinters, because down towards the run-in, there are three nasty little climbs that guys like Philippe Gilbert in the past have used to get themselves away from the field.
Well, there are two top sprinters not here. Mark Cavendish, the Tour de France sprint champion, and Alessandro Petacchi, a previous winner of this race. But there is one man who is coming out as the outstanding favourite.
Well, Tyler Farrar, Phil, I had to say, has had a very good start to the season, but more specifically, since the Tour de France has finished, this man has been hyper-active and very successful indeed, and he is cited in most of the French press today as one of the great favourites.
There are others too, of course. Tom Bonen, he's never won the Paris Tour, but he has won on the same finishing line in a stage of the Tour de France. There is Oscar Freire, who's been on the podium 3 times but never a winner, and JJ Haido, another man on form. And there's also another rider who could upset everything today, Andre Greipel. But before we go to the live action, this crash actually has just happened here. You can see it's right in the heart of the peloton. A lot of riders down. And seemingly the most seriously injured is Mikhailov here, and his right collarbone looks as though it may be broken. That's the Tour de France race doctor there, Gerard Porter, taking a look at that. Well, I can also tell you Andre Greipel was involved in something that took him off the back of the bunch an hour or so ago, and he never got back to the peloton, so that sprinter also out of Paris Tour today. We're now looking at the leaders of Paris Tour here at 42 kilometres out. They've got just 1 minute and 23 seconds remaining of a breakaway lead of over 7 3/4 minutes. Now, these 10 riders got clear 9 kilometres into the race today, and now they're just 42 from the finish. And I think because a lot of the work, Paul, has been done by the quick-step team of Tom Bonen, and in particularly by the Garmin Slipstream team of Tyler Farrar. They haven't allowed this break any chance at all.
Well, once they saw this breakaway get to an advantage of 7 minutes and 40 seconds, alarm bells started to ring. And, of course, the teams who think they've got the favourites on board came to the front end of the main field and started to control that gap. And then over the last 40 kilometres, they've reduced it now down, Phil, to 1 minute and 23 seconds. But don't discount the fact that Silence Lotto also had a number of riders participating in the chase at the front. And that's, of course, for Philippe Gilbert, who just recently won a big race in Italy, the Coppa Sabatini, and he is the defending champion.
Quick rundown of the names. Damien Godin. Some of these names will be strange. We don't normally talk about them in cycling. Damien Godin of B-Box, Matthew Heyman, Rabobank, Laszlo Bedrogi of Katusha, Mathieu Ledanu from Française des Jeux, Martin Elmiger, AG2 his teammate Cedric Pinault, Vacon Soleil, Adri Vierhouten, who's retiring after the race today. He's in the breakaway. Skill Shimano's Tom Feelers, Bretagne's Jean-Luc Delpech, and making up the top 10 in the breakaway, Jonathan Tia of over 93. That's the breakaway. They've worked very well together. Tia actually tried to leave them at 55 kilometres out, but they've lassoed him and put him back in that leading group of 10, and we've seen this lead come down quite quickly.
Well, Team Quick-Step are obviously very keen, Phil, to make sure this breakaway does get caught on the run-in towards the finish. They must feel extremely confident that their man Tom Bonen has got a very good chance of winning. Bonen, the Belgian national champion, recently won a stage of the big race around the Franco-Belge part of Belgium, and he finished second overall there to Tyler Farah, who is on fire, I would have to say, in the end of this season with incredible victories, 3-stage victories in the Eneco Tour, and of course 2-stage victories and the overall victory in that race I just mentioned, the Franco-Belge.
Yeah, no, he's got the confidence, and no American has ever won this event, and that would be another first of the year for him. Tyler would really feel as though he's had a stellar season. I think he does anyway, and so he should. Yes, he had to play number 2 to Mark Cavendish. That was for sure in the Tour de France, but this year has been one of tremendous development for Tyler Farrar, and next year he'll feel a lot better for it. Matty Heyman there, he's the reigning Commonwealth Games champion in the breakaway for Rabobank. These 10 riders then, 1:27 is the latest gap, 41 kilometres still to go. So we're back with the breakaway here. There are still 10 leaders just inside 35 kilometres from the finish. The gap is coming down by the second by second. 1:16 now as these 10 riders. Damien Godin is the rider pushing on through here, second-year professional, followed by Mathieu Ledanu. And this breakaway getting clear, as I say, at 9 kilometres into the race. There's always an early break from the high speed. They covered nearly 90 kilometres. It's an amazing distance in the first 2 hours of the race today, and the average speed currently 44 kilometres an hour. There's the peloton, and it's not going to be long now before they spot the helicopter above those 10 leaders.
Yes, going through the small town of Treuil here, which puts them, Phil, at around about 26 kilometres to go before the first of the 3 climbs in the last 5 miles of this race. And that first climb is the Côte de l'Épon. That's where in the past we've seen a first violent reaction coming from the main field. But they do need to pull back that leading group of 10 before they get there. Quick-Step, I think, very keen to go to the front end and do a lot of the pacemaking, but they've got themselves a lot of allies now. Also, Team Cervelo test team sending a couple of riders up towards the front end of the field, and I wonder if that's to give a chance to Roger Hammond, the British rider on Cervelo test team, a chance of a crack at victory, because over the last couple of races Hammond has been very close to getting himself a victory.
Yes, indeed, and he's in the black and white colours of Cervelo this year, and he's been knocking on the door, let's face it, getting thirds, fourths, and just not quite getting the kick that will take him across the line in first place. We could say Tyler Farrar's experienced all that this year, but these last couple of months he's converted all his places into wins. And if you count his overall result in the Franco-Belge, he's actually had 11 wins this year, which is tremendous result for him.
It certainly is. You can see the anguish on a lot of the riders' faces here as they get themselves concentrated, just thinking about when the attacks are going to start. There's Tom Bonen in the black, yellow and red jersey. National champion just behind him, Sylvain Chavanel. He's a man who could light this race up on the run-in towards the finish. Amazing to think that for a lot of his career, Chavanel raced for French teams, but he decided to move across to the Belgian team of Quick-Step during last year's transfer season because he wanted to become a one-day classics rider, and certainly he's proved that the change has been good for him.
He's enjoyed his period with the Belgians, and he'll be there again with them next year. So the blue and white jerseys of Quick-Step trying to deliver their man Bonen to the straight, but always mixing it and never far away from the front of the Garmin Slipstream riders. They were the ones who started the chase down when the leaders got out to 7 3/4 minutes. As you can see now, it's barely 1 minute with 33 kilometres or just over 20 miles to race the finish. We course our way south now. We have Tour on the right-hand shoulders of the riders as we go south. Then we return on narrow roads before we break out over some small hills and then turn onto the most famous finishing straight in the world. Sadly for the last time, 2.6 kilometres of the Avenue de Grammont.
Well, with that gap now just coming inside of the 1 minute mark, Phil, on these long, straight, open parts of the countryside around Tours, the main field will now be able to see the prey that they've been looking for the last 50 kilometres. Every time there's a straight part of the road, they will be able to judge the distance between themselves and that breakaway group and know just exactly how much effort they need to put in to pull them back into the fold. This is a group of riders they haven't seen since the 9th kilometre.
Well, initially it makes for a comfortable ride for the peloton, but then they know the pain is only around the corner, and now they have to bring it back and use the domestics as best they can. These are the leaders again now. On the front is Adrie Vierhouten, who is saying goodbye. There he is in the yellowish colours, saying goodbye to professional cycling this year, as he is one of 2 top riders retiring from Holland. Include the other one is in the race is Stefan de Jong, who is currently near the front and working for Tom Bonen. But Vierhouten has been a very good professional, long career, turning pro back in 1996. Only won 7 races, Paul, and yet we've commentated on him very often. He's been in tremendous situations where he's always been strong for the team again, rather like Matty Hayman.
Yeah, I think it's also a question of the famous name as well, because the famous name means 4 pieces of wood, and it's one of those names that has really stuck to us when we've seen him in any breakaway situation. But just to conjure up a bit of useless information, it seems to be that it's every odd year that this race has finished in a sprint over the last 10 years, because in 2003, 2005 and 2007 the race finished as a bunch sprint, while in 2004, 6 and 8 it was the result of a breakaway group. So are we going to predict a bunch sprint today?
I reckon. Well, as we race into the town of Evre-sur-Indre, as we head towards the department of the Loire, the Paris Tours race has got 10 men still to catch, and the gap just 53 seconds. To the leaders now, and 10 leaders together as they start the climb of the Côte de Crochu, which comes at just 23 kilometres or so from the finish, 27 kilometres from the finish, and the gap is holding at half a minute. But there should be a reaction, Paul, from the peloton on this climb.
Well, the main field certainly will start to pick up the pace, and you'll see that gap by the summit of this climb, Phil, start to be reduced, and it'll go inside of the 30-second margin. Silence Lotto not wanting to split the race up at this point. They want to try and keep it all together, but the leading group of 10 riders is now starting to split. Well, it's all starting to come together. 1 or 2 riders who were in that leading group have already been picked up by the main field. Slowly but surely, it looks as if we're talking here Gruppo Compacto, the group all back together.
Well, that's certainly Elmiger has come back, so too as Pinot. So the 10 riders, I think every one of them, I don't think anybody survived out front. If so, they've all come together at 26 to go. Although they're still showing us 28 seconds, so some have survived, and here they are. Matty Hayman still here. We've got 6 riders. Of the 10 riders, so Elmiger's gone back into the pack for sure. The Française de Jeu rider is Le Danube, Vaconsoleil, and that'll be Vierhouten. And the other rider here is Pinot, so he still survived.
Well, the 6 riders now will have to start working well together. They're actually circumnavigating the city of Tours. The next town they will go into is Jouy-le-Tour, which is just to the south of the city, and then they'll be getting extremely close to that repetitive 3 climbs on the run in towards the finishing line.
It's always a horrible sight if you're in the breakaway at 27 seconds looking over your shoulder. The whole field is massing here, and it's all the sprinters' men now, isn't it? On the left we've got La Française de Jeu, we've got Oscar Freires Rabobank in the centre. Ominously, I've lost sight of the Garmin boys here. That's a dangerous little left-hander as they start to nip in and out there. But they are all back together. Tyler Farrar is right up there near the front as well, but he hasn't got a lot of teammates around him.
So too is Oscar Freire, and in the 5th position there is the Italian national champion Pippo Pozzato. Here we're looking at a little bit of discussion coming from Pinot from AG2R. He's trying to encourage all of the riders in this leading group to keep working together to try and prolong this breakaway for as long as possible.
Oh, that was Delpache, the rider on the Bretagne team, who was getting the sharp end of the tongue there of Pinot. But in fairness, after 200 miles in the breakaway, these boys are tired. And a little time, a small gap opens, it could be the end for that rider. So you've got to pay a lot of attention now.
Well, Matty Heyman in the orange jersey there of Rabobank, he'll be wondering how his man Oscar Freire is doing in the field behind. And Freire was sitting right at the front end. Freire is the kind of sprinter, Phil, who could be very attentive on those last 3 climbs inside the last 5 miles of the race and join any small breakaway that does form.
So they were 10. They're down to just 6 leaders now. They're 24 kilometres out and they've got 29 seconds in hand. We are at 23 kilometres left now, and Silence Lotto, the teammates of Philippe Gilbert, have decided they've got to close this breakaway down. There's only 6 of them, but the gap is still probably too much at 28 seconds.
Well, they're trying to keep it nice and fast now. It's down to 28 seconds. The front end of the main field now starting to show, Phil, the little bit of fatigue that's creeping in. And look how long that line is now. The tireder riders slipping to the back end of the main field. It's almost like the distillery that is really sifting and sorting out the stronger men from the weaker ones who are slipping to the back of the pack. Another move coming here. This is, again, little tentatives at the front end of the main field. The ideal place to attack here in Paris Tours is to wait, stay in the pack until around about 8 kilometres to go when you get that first of the 3 final climbs, the Côte de l'Épon. That is an ideal launch pad to get a breakaway off the front end of the main field.
Well, that was Jurgen Roelants who started the ball rolling there, former champion of Belgium. And he's still staying up near the front runners, but he's got at least he's in sight of them all to get together now. We've got different teams being represented at the front. Cofidis, who next year have lost their Pro Tour status, and they weren't too happy about that. As they swing off to the left now, we've got other teams on new colours here who are also launching their possibilities here.
Lampre over on the right-hand side with their very famous blue and pink jersey, and they'll be looking to see whether their former world champion Alessandro Ballan has got the form in his legs to get out to the front end of the main pack. Had a very difficult year, the world champion, former world champion. Started with a nasty virus, but he seemed to be coming back onto form towards the end of the Tour de France this year.
Tête de la course, the head of the race, 22 kilometres out. They're hanging on, aren't they? 26 seconds is the gap. They're down to these 6 riders now. There's the names for you: Heyman, Ladanu, Pinot, Vierhouten, Tom Wieles, who's actually on pretty good form, and also Jean-Luc Dolpech is the man that's made up those 6 leaders.
Well, they're all still working together, just trying to keep themselves off the front end of the main field. But I think this is really, Phil, question just of prolonging the agony, because that main field, they've chased them down slowly but surely over the last 50 kilometres. They brought it down from 7 minutes and 40 seconds down to just inside of the half-a-minute mark. And it's still the same teams on the front end of the main field. Quick Step very keen to get this race back together, because they've got a feeling today that Tom Bonen is going to come up with the goods. But to do that, he's going to have to beat the American rider Tyler Farrar.
Kevin Holtzman's on the front there, working hard now to try and keep these riders in touch with especially Tom Bonen. As we pan down, watch out for that black, red and yellow jersey of the national champion of Belgium. Tom Bonen, we have to say, he's not quite the feared sprinter we've seen in the past. He's had an up and a down year. He's won some good races, though. Paris-Roubaix, for example, the national championship. But he really does need to add a classic here.
I think he'd like to get himself a classic victory with the Belgian national champions jersey on his shoulders. This is Steven de Jong on the front, as you mentioned earlier. He's the retiree at the end of this season after having an extremely long and illustrious career. A number of riders retiring, big names retiring from the sport. We just saw a little earlier Marcus Lovquist, who in fact was offered a contract by Lance Armstrong's Radio Shack team, and he decided after a long career he too wanted to pull a close to his career at the end of this year.
Well, I don't think there are many riders would turn down the chance to ride alongside Lance Armstrong, especially as it's certain to be Lance Armstrong's final full season as a professional cyclist at 38 years of age. There are other races he wants to ride in 2011, including the World Ironman Championships in Hawaii and the Cape Epic Cyclo mountain bike race across the bottom of the Cape in South Africa. That's a 2-man race, by the way. It's shot from absolutely nowhere to being one of the best races in the world for mountain bikers. 28 seconds the gap. They're really not closing in at all now. These boys have got themselves organised. They're obviously the strength of the 10. The best riders who've still got something in those legs after 209, well, exactly 200 kilometres as we speak, in the lead so far.
Well, here we'll give you a chance of the perspective between that leading group of 6 riders and the main field. That's not much more than 500 metres. I think what the main field is now doing is just judging the catch to what they hope is going to be perfection. They know that in about 12 kilometres time, they've got that first of these nasty little climbs on the run in towards the finish, the Côte de l'Épon, which is quite a steep climb at the start of it, and the launch pad for riders like Pozzato, like Philippe Gilbert, to try and get away and outfox the sprinters.
Well, 26 seconds it is. It's a painful way, but the bunch is slowly getting in. And at 20 kilometres to go, the sprinters soon, I think, will be starting to lick their lips. We're looking here at Ronnie Mathias now, who's just got away from the peloton, rides for the B-Box Bouygues Telecom team. There's been attack and counter-attack because obviously that gap seems to be locked in at 26 seconds, those 6 leaders. And sooner or later, somebody's going to have to put down the attack that will count. Quick reaction from the field, as expected. And a quick reaction from Silence Lotto. They're being very attentive on the run into the finish. And I think the order of the day is look after Philippe Gilbert. He's on great form. And every time a move goes off the front end of the main field, Silence Lotto puts a man there basically to negate the success, to have a breakaway group come back into the main field. That looked like Jürgen Roelands, who just did the job there for Silence Lotto. He's their man, obviously the workhorse at this stage of the race. There'll be others trying to look after Philippe Gilbert or Greg van Avermaet. Don't forget, Greg is a good sprinter, and if Gilbert can't make it the double, Avermaet will try and take it out in the sprint. I just don't think he's quite as quick as some of the other sprinters in this race. Like Juan Antonio Fletcher as well, they're getting himself across the move. And again, it's all come back together. It's acceleration and deceleration while they wait for the next 10 kilometres, because that's when they know the climbs start. That's when they know the really violent attacks will come from the big names with the big engines. These are the heroic 6 riders, the survivors of the original break of 10. Still all of them working at 203 kilometres. They have been ahead on the race today. And they've got 17 left to ride, and the gap, unless our clock is stuck, is staying at 26 seconds, kilometre after kilometre. It is a quick step once again. Just moved. De Jong comes straight back up to the front end. He knows that he has to keep this organised at the front end of the pack. He doesn't want it to slow down too much to give that little extra advantage to that group of 6 riders. Bonen over to the left-hand side there with his Belgian national champions jersey on his shoulders. He wants the win here this afternoon. He wants it to come all together onto the Avenue de Grammont to have a sprinter's delight. Well, this at the back now is the rider who moments ago was one of the 10 riders in the lead, because this is Jonathan Thier, the young French rider who is now hanging on for dear life. But at least he's still in there. He's only 23. And a big moment for him. He's a 3rd-year professional on the less, and at 23 years of age, of course, a long career ahead of him. So plenty of experience. But over 200 kilometres he has led today, but he's at the back of the race now. You can see the little urgency now. Everybody looking very concentrated. Hands fairly close to the brake levers, listening to see whether or not there's going to be any squeal of the brakes as riders take risks to stay at the front end of the main field. But it's always Quick Step. And again, this big rider from Quick Step deciding to come to the front end of the main field is thinking only about Tom Bonen, and that's Kevin Hulsmans. Yes, and look, to take a look at the face of Tom Bonen there, Paul. He was under pressure to hold the pace of his teammates at the front. Of course, he's the man with the twitch fibres if it comes to a final kick. Matt Heyman there for Rabobank in the orange colours. He's got a sprinter in Oscar Freire, who has 3 times been on the podium in Tours, but never on the top spot. But he's a crafty rider, Oscar Freire. He knows that he has the ability to go with the breakaways that might form on the run in towards the finish line. And if he can, he could come up with a victory here this afternoon and outwit and outfox the big sprinters like Tom Bonen. And, of course, the man the United States feels has got a very good chance of winning this classic this afternoon, Tyler Farah. Well, we might get a chance to see some of the beautiful chateaus of the Loire Valley here now, which is as we race down to the old city of Tours. Very famous cycling city. For 21 years the Tour has been. The Tour has come here, but rather this classic has been finishing here in Tours. And the last time we'll get the chance to see the long straight in the Avenue de Grammont. That's a slice of history we'll be very, very sad to see pass away. Roger Hammond's got his team up here. Somebody's gone the long way round the roundabout on the breakaway. I think it was Adrie Aert Vierhouten who went the wrong way there.
Well, he certainly chose the wrong route around there,
me.
Phil, and he's lost himself about 10 seconds.
No, this is Via Hout in second place, so it couldn't have been him. It must be somebody else.
He's going to have to pull himself back up onto this leading group, but at 23 seconds, the main field certainly can't be very far behind them. Now there's the main field, still very tightly packed together, and if we look up to the top there, you can just see the leading group of 6 riders. Shortly, they will all be back in the fold.
Well, it can't be long now, can it, as the riders are at the same roundabout here. That was David Lelay at the back in the blue. He had a very, very good start to the season. We were talking about him as being a likely classic winner when we were talking of the sprint classics in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and he's had a good year. The peloton are hunting, and the quarry is now just 22 seconds ahead. Tuesdays on Versus, the outrageous original series Sports Soup, hosted by comedian Matt Eisman. Featuring the week's best highlights, lowlights and everything in between. We're covering the coverage with the hilarious show that sports writes. It's Sports Soup, Tuesdays at 10 Eastern, right here on Versus. 13 kilometres to go. Unlucky for some, but not yet these 6 breakaway riders. They are still clear, and it's 15 seconds the gap. We are now into the undulations on the narrow backcountry lanes here as we circumnavigate from the south to head north to the finish in Tours itself and right down the Avenue de Grammont. The peloton, well, because of the size, there's only about 8 or 9 riders can get to the front and set the pace, but there seem to be plenty willing to do that. Look at this now. The speed has split riders off the back.
It certainly has. These are the riders who've been doing a lot of the pacemaking early on. Riders from Silence Lotto, riders from Garmin going backwards there. I think, Phil, that's because of all of the work that they were doing. That was Kylian Patour, the French rider on Garmin Slipstream. And you can see the little moves now starting to come from the leading group of 6. This is Tom Wieler's of Skill Shimano. But there in the back, you can see the dark cloud of the main field.
It is the main field and not the rain, because the skies have cleared to welcome Paris Tours home again. Inevitably, it is going to come down, I think, to a sprint finish on this occasion. It's not always inevitable, I have to say. Richard Virenque is the man who won this race after a 240-kilometre breakaway. Although the peloton could almost reach out and touch him, but he got to the line first, and it wasn't a sprint. Tom Wieler's on good form, is having a good season, and Skill Shimano have had a great year this year.
Well, it's a team that's always been extremely aggressive. A wild card selection into the Tour de France, and everybody wondered whether they were going to be riding out of their depth, but they were always in the breakaways, always aggressive, and this is a man who's probably trying to ride his team into the history books as well. Amazing to think that this is one of the historic events of the sport. It was first organised, Paris Tours, back in 1896.
Tom's only won 2 races in his career, and they've both been the same event over different years. The Tour of Shanghai Lake in China. He won stage 9 this year, and he managed to win stage 5 last year. But that doesn't mean he's not a winner, because this man has got some good results in the last couple of weeks, being right in the sharp end of the peloton in the sprint for the line. It's an opportunist move now, and he's pulled out 3 seconds, 18 seconds, 11 kilometres to go.
Yes, but more importantly, 3 kilometres to go to the climb of the Côte de l'Épon. That's a climb that is just at 5 miles to go to the finish. There we pull back and should see the front end of the main field. Shortly they will pull the 5 riders back, and they will probably know that there's one man just still surviving off the front end of the pack.
Well, this is the face of the man now who can't have a lot left in those legs. He's got a courageous heart, though. You've got to say that for him. 17 seconds the gap. They are coming for him now. 10 kilometres for the peloton here. Tom Bonan has said to the boys, we're getting desperate, lads, and 3 of them are now setting the pace at the front for Quick Step.
It's official. 10 kilometres to go to the finish for the riders at the back end of the main field, and they're still looking for a quarter of a minute to pull back the lone survivor of the breakaway. Wieler's is off the front by around about 5 seconds from his former breakaway companions, and there you can see them just in the back there, and I think they've decided, Phil, to allow him his freedom. But this is a fairly good move here. He's got to survive for another 2 kilometres, then all of a sudden he's going to get that smack in the face from that nasty climb, the Côte de l'Épon. If that doesn't end it for him, then about 2 kilometres after that he's got the Côte du Pont Volant, the flying bridge, and then of course the final climb of the day, the Côte de Petit Padin, the step of the small donkey.
I must say, it sounds much nicer in the French language.
It certainly does.
18 seconds at 9 kilometres. The camera's pulled back now. There is the peloton as they reassess the situation. Oscar Frere's Rabobank teammate has moved up on the far right, far left as we now look at the picture here. Everybody looking at each other to see who is up here now.
They're all waiting, and the sprinters will all be riding in the first 15 to 20 places, knowing that they're going to be attacked on those 3 climbs of the day, and knowing that they're going to have to drag their bodies over and get themselves into the front end of the pack again for the long finishing straight of 2.6 kilometers of the Avenue de Grammont, which will probably be raced up for the final time here at Paris Tours, because they're going to put a tramway right through the heart of Tours and the pedestrian part of the city.
And let's also remember, Paul, with the Garmin Slipstream team, Tyler Farrer is without his New Zealand lead-out man today, Julian Dean, and will probably rely on Martin Maskamp, the Dutchman, who does pack a good sprint finish for himself, but he'll almost certainly be the last man to lead out. This is Matty Heyman of Rabobank. He's making desperate bids here as the peloton line up the gun sights now, seeing him for the first time since the 9th kilometre of the race, and we're now 8 from the finish.
That's 5 miles and not too far away from this climb, and you can see the front end of the main field. They really are now starting to realise this is the critical part of the race here this afternoon. You can see how steep the first part of the climb. There's the main field. They're all over this road, and they'll be waiting for the first attacks to be announced by the peloton.
And here comes the first attack, right on cue here on the climb to try and finish this all off now. This is the Silence Lotto boys who's launched the attack. It looks as though it may well be Roy Sentjens who's gone again.
But it looks like it's Tom Bonan coming across the gap here. Now, he's regarded as a sprinter. He really wants Paris Tours here this afternoon. Don't forget, this is a man who can win Paris-Roubaix, and he's not scared of the climbs.
Now, what does that tell us here? Because Bonan may not be so confident about that big sprint, and he's decided he's going to do what the teams would never have expected here, to bridge the gap as he has done, and he's now gritting his teeth and pushing on. Well, this is the new face of Tom Bonan.
Well, coming across the gap, you can see Silence Lotto, and that will probably be Philippe Gilbert saying, well, I didn't expect this one. I was expecting Tom Bonan to sit back and wait for the sprint.
A champion performance here by Tom Bonan as he's now surrounded by 2 Silence Lotto riders. And the field completely split up. A few deep breaths required here before they recover their composure. And then try at 7 kilometres to go. We get on to the Avenue de Grammont, 2.6 kilometres from the finish, and then he's dead straight down to the finishing line. All right, well, let's go for a break, and when we come back, it'll be the final showdown, the last time Paris Tours will go to the line along the Avenue de Grammont. We'll see you in a moment. Desperate moments here now. We're looking at Boris Bosic here, the sprinter on the Vacances-Soleil. 4 riders are clear. Philippe Gilbert, last year's winner. Greg Van Avermaet, the sprinter on Silence Lotto. He was the first to reach the attack of Tom Bonan. We would never have read this into Paris Tours at 6 kilometres out.
Crash at the back.
There's a crash at the back here.
Well, there's a big crash gone down in the back, and it's blocked up the road because these roads are extremely narrow. That slowed down a lot of riders. That will give the big advantage now, Phil, to the breakaway group at the front. This crash probably happened at the back end of the main field, but these riders are not going to see the victory this afternoon in Paris Tours.
No, and the Japanese sprinter on Boyd Telecom there, Yukio Arashiro, was the rider adjusting his back wheel, so he's lost his chance now. Now, who knows if that has assisted this breakaway. Boris Bosic will be thinking of a big win here, so will Tom Bonan. Gilbert's outnumbered, 3 sprinters to 1 just at the moment, but where is Greg Van Avermaet?
He's just gone off the back because of the pressure and acceleration of his own teammate, Philippe Gilbert. He went up a slight incline in the road, and Gilbert looks back to say, wow, where's my teammate? Well, there he is. He's just been tailed off. And I wonder if Gilbert now will slow back a fraction to see whether or not his teammate can come back. You can see him looking over his shoulder there, thinking, come on, Greg, I need you up here if I'm going to beat these 2 guys on the run into the finish.
Well, he'll have to surprise them. He'll never out-sprint them, that's for sure. They're both very strong finishers. I take my hat off, though, to Tom Bonan, taking the bull by the horns here. And a sprinter launching an attack like that with about 6.5, 7 kilometres to go. That was a very brave decision. Wasn't part of the plan to pull across 3 good sprinters with him, but even so.
It wasn't the plan for, I don't think, anybody to see Tom Bonan. Here is looks like Pozzato, Italian national champion. He knows how dangerous these final few kilometres are, and he also is looking to get himself across the gap, probably kicking himself that his former teammate Tom Bonan was the man who attacked out of the sprinters group.
Now they've got to watch the motorbikes here. They're getting a bit closer to what is a crucial stage of the race here as Gilbert now kicks again. He says, if anything, his form is better than when he won this race last year. But, of course, they're all watching him now. And Tom Bonan sitting there, the champion of Belgium and the champion of Italy, Filippo Pozzato, is trying to reach them.
Well, he's got across to Greg Van Avermaet there. And now he's got himself a lone lead over the front end of the main field. It's desperate moments for the Italian national champion. He is looking to try and join this 3-man leading group. But he's got to get himself, Phil, across a gap of about 12 seconds. Just looking down there, this is a phenomenal performance.
Well, Pozzato's having his best season for a couple of years with 5 wins at 4 kilometres to go now. He leans into this corner, looks up to an empty road, just going under the bridge there are Bosic, Gilbert and Bonan.
The official time gap is 7 seconds between the 3-man leading group and Pippo Pozzato. But as we've mentioned a number of times, Phil, this finishing straight is extremely long. And if you start to make tactical manoeuvres on the run in towards the finish, anybody can come back from behind. And that, I think, is what Pippo Pozzato has got in the back of his mind. He needs to make the junction. If he gets caught by this group, though, he will slow, and then the advantage tips over to the 3-man leading group. But this is not the main field. This is a select group of riders.
This must have gone off the front at the time of that crash back in the narrow roads there. This is a very, very different Paris Tour to any we've seen for years and years. We've had the breakaways get to clear and stay clear for hundreds of kilometres. This time the peloton has split up. Everybody, it seems, wants to win the 103rd edition.
Well, Pozzato will not give up until that group behind him is into his slipstream. He will keep riding all of the time because he knows as long as he's got the gap, he's always got a chance.
Well, there's a little bit of head turning back in that chase group to see who's there, and right now we're not sure who is there, but these 3 are certainly at the sharp end of the race. A very brave decision as they're heading up towards the start of the Avenue.
At 3 kilometres to go, the gap of the 3 leaders is given out at 10 seconds advantage. This is the right-hand swinger now. In the distance, Phil, they are now in the Avenue de Grammont. They can see the kilometre mark. They can probably just about see the finishing line as well, but it's a long finishing straight, one of the longest in the sport.
Well, the riders are saying adieu to the longest finishing straight in the world of cycling at 2.6 kilometres. That's the 2-kilometre banner down the road. And as they tip over that, they're racing across the Loire right now. They're really doing this race justice today. It's a finish we did not want to see the end of course, but there'll be a tramway, a double-track tramway, right down the centre of this road, probably by this time next year. The sprinters are trying to finish it off in a most unusual fashion by breaking clear.
2 kilometres to go. There's the kilometre flag. It looks quite close, doesn't it? But it's an awful long way this straight as we go through here. But there's no time at all for tactical manoeuvring. These 3 riders have got to keep working together and not think about holding something back, because if you do, if you start to slow down and lose your momentum, immediately the group behind will come back and catch them.
They can't afford to slow down. There is no time, and they keep looking over the shoulder to see what progress is like. Vacansoleil's Borut Bosic is up there. The Slovenian rider who has had 5 wins this year is a very fast sprinter, including that great stage he took in the Tour of Spain. Pozzato will not give up either. These boys have been right on his back wheel and still haven't shut him down.
They are trying to get to the back wheel of Pippo Pozzato, but there's no organisation in that group. There you can see the Flamme Rouge. That is the final kilometre. It is such a long finishing straight. They are still working well together. They're really going to have to watch out for Borut Bosic, Phil, because he is a very good sprinter. He too, the rider there in the Vacansoleil jersey, a winner of a stage in the Vuelta a España.
Well, no Slovenian's ever been on the podium either, as he now follows through last year's winner. What a great defence, whatever the result for Philippe Gilbert. The red kite was still in a straight line here. Down the far end of the trees is the end of the 103rd Paris Tours. The sprinters have taken the race to the stayers, and they've got rid of the peloton. What a terrific result that is.
Gilbert, switch of the elbow there to indicate, come on, keep the pace making, keep riding at the front end of the main field. So Buzik comes through. Tom Bonen onto his wheel. Now's the time, as Gilbert is in the ideal position, but they've still got 700 or 800 metres to go. Gilbert, a quick look over his shoulder, Phil, to see what the gap is like. That is Paris Tours, all in the same straight, and the three men at the front have still got this very good chance of getting the victory, but don't slow down and make too many tactical manoeuvres.
They can't. That is Paris Tours, yes, but four different bunches. Who would have ever predicted that as they come up towards the finish? As they now are going to have to go, but watch out, because they're still plugging away back there, and that is still Pozzato. They've never got him any closer. He's 10 metres behind. Now, who's going to launch first? It's got to be Philippe Gilbert, but Bonen, and there goes Gilbert now, and that was what they were waiting for, and Bonen still sitting on the back wheel here. This could be a big upset, but Bosic has got the back wheel of Philippe Gilbert. Now it's Tom Bonen, and is this going to be a brilliant result for Bonen? But you know, Gilbert, the look on his face, he's going to win this for the second year in a row, and he does. Well, that is amazing. Philippe Gilbert has triumphed over Bonen and Bosic. Now, surely Philippe Pozzato cannot survive. They've been this close all of the way as Frere comes on the left of our picture. And Chavanel, I think it is, going on the right. Well, that's terrific. Fourth place for Pozzato.
Pozzato held on there just ahead of Oscar Freire, and this is the rest of the race coming in one by one here, completely split up on that run in towards the finish. A great win there by Philippe Gilbert. He certainly was on form, and I wonder if he would have bet against himself beating a big sprinter like Tom Bonen. Bonen really got it all wrong here this afternoon. He crosses the line in second place. 2 wins back-to-back in Paris Tours for this man, Philippe Gilbert, one of the pre-race favourites, coming up with a win, and that was the winning move there. Bonen prepared to sit on the wheel of Buzik, waiting for the Slovenian rider to react, waiting for a chance to come out of his slipstream. He had to bridge first to the slipstream of Gilbert, which he did here. He closed down the gap, came across there to his compatriot's wheel, but then he had nothing left to come out of that slipstream, as Gilbert made the right move at the right time and had the power to take it through to the finish.
Bonen's mistake was he'd firmly believed that Bosic was the winner of the race. He was the one to follow, and he gave Gilbert just too much of a lead before he came off the wheel of Bosic, almost knocking him off in the process there, and he couldn't close that gap down and still have a kick to beat the other Belgian rider. That's a great result for Gilbert. Back-to-back wins for him. All he said, I can only equal what I did last year, but I think I've got better form. So the result, Philippe Gilbert is at the top there with 5 hours 12 minutes. A good race today. Bonen, Bosic, Pozzato, he stayed 20 yards in front of the race for the last 4 kilometres. Oscar Freire 5th, Gavazzi 6th, and looking down there, no signs at all of Tyler Farrar, because I think he missed his move out on the hills. Well, all smiles on the podium. A little bit of a grimace, I think, from Tom Bonen. He followed the wrong man in the sprint. He should have known better, because Gilbert is a great opportunist. But, Paul, that is Gilbert's 5th win of the season. But interestingly enough, he becomes the first rider to do the double since Nicola Minali, the Italian, in 95 and 96. And before that, the great sprinter from Holland, Joe de Roo, who did it in 63 and in 1962.
Well, he got himself into the right move when he saw Tom Bonen make that attack, which was a bit of a surprise attack, I think, for everybody. But once he got into that move, he worked well, even though he probably knew the 2 men with him were much faster sprinters. But he used all of his nous and tactical knowledge to beat them to the line.
So 3 smiling faces on the podium. I can tell you, Tyler Farrar, though he missed the move there, he's come home in 46th place, exactly 1 minute behind Philippe Gilbert, Bonen and Bosic, and I think he'd be pretty unhappy about that. Well, that wraps things up from here in France, but it's already time, you know, to start looking to 2010, as this Wednesday, October the 14th, we will have the 2010 Tour de France route announcement streaming live on Versus.com. That's not to be missed, and it will come to you at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so set those alarms. And don't forget to check in with Versus.com either for the latest articles and videos from me, from Paul, and from Bob Roll, and the rest of the Versus team. Congratulations once again to Philippe Gilbert, a historical moment on the Avenue de Grammont. For Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying We'll see you all next year. Goodbye for now.